in this video we're going to be making a simple FPS controller. Now FPS are one of the most popular genre of games nowadays, so that's why I decided to make this tutorial to help anyone who wants to learn how to make these. Now this tutorial will be divided into two parts. One will be the look management and one will be the actual moving. Alright, so let's get straight into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I hope you know the basic layout of Unity before starting off this tutorial. So I'm first going to create a simple cube, and you can just rename this cube to the ground and then hit R and just scale it to make it more like ground, or you could just use a plane, but I'll just be using a cube. And then what I'm going to do is make the player. First, I'll make an empty game object and I'll call this scene. And this is where I'll put all of my scene objects in, just to organize the hierarchy a bit. And now I'm going to create a 3D capsule. And I'm just going to, I'll call this the player. I'll name it the player, hit W, and I'll move it up. Maybe, I do believe, 1, 2. About 1.5, I believe. Yeah, 1.5 should do the trick. So I'll move it up 1.5 on the Y just to make sure it is on the exact, it's on the ground. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a folder and I'll call this scripts. And in here what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to make a new C# script, and I'll call this player look. And actually, while I'm at it, let's not keep the player in the scene, because the player is not exactly an object that's going to be stationary in the scene. It's going to be moving, so maybe I'll create a different game object for that. Okay, did not work, just put it on. Right, and now I'm going to create another script and I'll call this player move. And now I'm going to open the script up in my editor. And actually, before I open this up, just a quick thing that if you haven't got this set, you probably should. If you head over into your Unity settings, into your preferences, external tools, you want to make sure that your external script editor is selected to a script editor that of your choice. So in my case, that's Visual Studio Insiders. And now I'm just going to open up player look. I'll see you when it's open. Alright, so one thing you want to do before you start coding is head over into Unity, head over into your player, and what you're going to do is you're going to drag your main camera underneath your player, and you're going to reset its transform by setting its position to 0 and Z to 0. This will essentially bring it to the foot of the player, and then we don't want that, so you can just bump its Y position up by a little. And by a little I mean 0.5. And now we can start coding. So in Visual Studio Code, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a public reference to our player's transform. So public transform player. And then I'm going to make a public float mouse sense. I'll set this to 10. You can really set it to whatever you would like, but I think 10 is a good default value. And then I'm going to create two floats called X, which is going to be 0, and then another one, float Y, and be 0. And now to ensure that our cursor is not moving freely in our screen, we're just going to have to lock the cursor. So that means we can hide the cursor by creating our start method. And then here, what we're going to type is we're going to say cursor.lock state is equal to cursor lock mode.locked. And now what we want to do is in the update method, we want to set the X and Y variables. So what you're going to type in is you're going to say X plus equals minus input dot get access mouse mouse Y multiplied by mouse sense, and then you're just going to say Y plus equals input dot get access access mouse X, I believe. Yep, and multiply this by mouse sense. And now we just want to make sure that our player does not turn over into oblivion. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna set x equal to mathf.clamp, and we're gonna set the value to be x, and the minimum value which it can turn to is 90, and the maximum is also going to be 90. So minus 90, sorry, and 90. Now we want to actually apply these rotations to the camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to say transform dot local rotation, equals quaternion dot Euler. And here we're going to pass in the x, which is going to be x, and then we're going to pass in 0 and 0 for the x for the other two axes. And now we're going to say our players transform dot local rotation is going to equal quaternion dot Euler. Yep, and here we're going to pass in 0 for the x, y for the y, and 0 again for the z. And now this is a very simple cursor look script, and this should work. I'll just show you I've already shown you that you're supposed to drag in the main camera. You're supposed to reset its transform. Y should be 0.5. Make sure it's childed to the player. And drag in your player look script onto your camera. And set the player variable, which is available in the inspector, to be the parent game object, which is our player. And now if I were to hit play, you can see that we are turning around normally, and this is really cool. And now we can actually get to move, which is going to be the next part of. Alright, so in this part we're going to start making our player move. So the first thing you want to do, why is this checked, is you want to add a rigid body to your player, and you're going to make sure it is interpolate, and you want to freeze all the rotation, so X, Y, and Z, because we don't want our player to fall over when they're moving, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to head over into the player move script. And you see you have the default, Unity stuff. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a private, I do believe it is a rigid body, that's what we're attached, and we call this RB. Why is it autocorrecting to RB? Then again, do private float, x equals 0, private float, y equals 0. And then in the start method, we just want to set RB. So RB equals get component rigid body. And then what we want to do is in the update, we're just going to say x equals input get axis horizontal. And we also need to create a move speed. So public, we want to be able to access this in the inspector. Float move speed, and we can set this to like 10. That might be a little fast, but that's okay. So here we'll just multiply that by move speed, and we want to do the same thing for the y variable. So y is going to be input.get axis vertical into move speed. And now to actually move the player, the first thing we want to create is a vector 3. We call this move position, and we're going to set this to transform dot let's see here, right, I guess, multiplied by x plus transform dot forward, yep, into y. And then we want to make another vector 3, which is going to be the one that we actually use. So vector 3 new move position equals new vector 3. And here we're going to pass in move pose dot x rb.velocity.y, and then here we're gonna pass in move position.z. And then we just want to set the velocity, so rb.velocity equals the new move position. And that's really a very simple controller. Obviously, we'll be adding a jump functionality later on in the video, but for now, I think this is fine. So make sure that you head over into your player and attach the script. And once that's done, hit play. And now you can see if I can move forward close to the edge. Yes, I can. Can I move left? Yep. Right? Yep. Forward? Yep. I can move everywhere. You can see my shadows, and I can fall like I just did there. That's really epic. So now let's work on the jump functionality. Let's get started on the jumping. So first things first, we just want a variable up here called public float jump force, so we can edit it in the inspector. You can keep it at 5, 10, 15, 20, really whatever you want. I'm just going to keep it at about, let's say, 10. And then you want to create an if statement to check if the user has pressed the space, and then we want to say, then we're just going to set the velocity to a new vector 3 rb.velocity.x, and then here we're going to pass in the jump force variable we just created, and then rb.velocity.z. And this will get the job done, but not exactly done. You see, because as of right now, we're not really checking if the player is on the ground, because right now, I'll just show it to you. If I were to press space, you can see I can go on and on and on and on and on and on, and then just fall crashing into the ground, which is, you might want to have that in your game, but I don't really go with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a layer mask, and essentially this is just a way of separating out different layers of your game. So I'm going to create a layer mask, and I'll call this layer mask or what is ground. And then what we want to do is we want to create a public bool is grounded. In here we're going to say is grounded equals physics dot check sphere, oops, checks check sphere, and the vector 3 position is going to be a new vector 3 transform dot position dot x transform dot position y minus 1. This is just going to get the bottom of the player, and the z is just going to be dot position dot z. And as for the radius, you can give it to be like a huge one, but that isn't that's not the best thing to do. I'm just going to give this to be 0.05 f, and then the layer mask is obviously going to be what we just defined there. And no, I don't think it's layer mask, it's what is ground. Let me just soft grab it so you can see easier. Right, and now instead of just only checking this, we can also say and, so that's double ampersands, is grounded. And that's a very simple jump function that doesn't allow you to jump into oblivion. So let's just see how that worked. Play. Now if I jump, alright, that's because we haven't defined ground. So the first thing you want to do is create a ground layer. So you're going to head over to the layer, you're going to add layer, and you're going to call this, not user layer 3, sorry. You're going to call this no, ground, just ground. And essentially anything that you want your player to be able to jump on, just set that layer to ground. So I'll make this the ground, and here I'll assign what is ground to ground, not the UI, the ground. And let's deselect UI. Now if I were to hit play, you can see that I can jump, but I cannot jump on forever. I'm spamming my spacebar, but as you can tell, I cannot jump. And you can just tweak this jump force to your heart's content. Let's say you want it to be at 5 for a little more like short and stout jump. You can really change this to whatever you would like. And yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.